Here we are today with conversations with your higher self, and I am here with Eddie Mullins, who is a mystic, shamanic, spiritual teacher. And I didn't slaughter that too bad, did I?
No, no, you got it. You got it. It's all right.
And yeah, this is great. I'm excited to have you here, Eddie. Eddie, I don't know if anybody knows, but he is so freaking amazing. It's like talking to Merlin, when I talk to you. It's
That's so
just
nice.
incredible. But how did you get to where you are now? How did this awakening unfold for you, and how did you come into these beautiful modalities that you
How much time do we have?
have? As much as you want, honey.
So a lot of it, a lot of things, I was one of those people that was born with the soul kind of blasting full force.
Nice.
So I had to go through the experience, and that doesn't mean everything was easy, because it was probably quite the opposite. So I just had a really deep connection from the time I arrived with spirit.
Wow.
So I had this sense of there was this whole other world, but somehow I knew I couldn't share that with the people around me.
Hmm.
So I'd kind of learned this human way of living on this earth. And I was always asking the questions from a very young child, what am I doing here? Why am I here? So I just had a really strong connection from the very beginning with the angels. And I didn't really know as a child, because I wasn't born in a religious family or a spiritual family or even a metaphysical family.
Ouch.
So it was, I knew I had to keep a lot of it to myself. So I was having, and I don't know how early this happened, but I was having visitations. It's what was one of those moments where you just know you're feeling it, you know something is there.
Hmm.
And so I was having these,
What were they?
there were spirits, lost souls,
Oh.
seeking me out. And it was kind of frightening to me as a kid, because I didn't really know what was going on. You know, some people talk about that, and it's like they just knew instinctively they were supposed to help. And so I didn't really know that in the beginning. And then I would feel these beings that I knew were a different frequency come in, which were star people, archangels, light beings come in to assist me and help me in those experiences. And so there was nothing that was like bad or anything like that. It was just, for me as a kid, it was all about spiritual frequencies and being able to understand that, and in a sense being taught to remember, which is kind of what I do in my work, is I help people to remember who they are and their gifts and all that piece. But yeah, it just started to grow more. And there was, like, in the generation, usually about 7 years old, it starts to fade or turn off. And mine just more or less faded a few times too as I got older, because of the noise of the world. But I was very connected to the angelic realm, as I said, but I didn't know that those were angels. I knew that they were celestial beings, but because there wasn't a lot of this terminology, and I grew up in a very, very rural town in the Midwest, so there wasn't a lot of conversation at that time. This is in the 70s. And so there wasn't a lot of conversation, but I just knew that there was another part of me, and I just came in with that. So some of the ascension stuff that we talk about today, I recognize that I had some of that, not all of it, of course, as a kid, blasting wide open. So there was just these, I would get these feelings when I was around people. I was reading their soul. I was reading their energy. And this was all just natural to me. So that's why I've always looked at this journey as something I am and not something I do. So, and things started to gradually become more and more open, and school was not fun for me because I could hear everything. People's thoughts and feelings, and even when there was quiet time or study hall or things like that, until I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, that I learned how to be more grounded with it and set boundaries. So then I could kind of shut it down when I when I didn't need it or I was by myself, then I would open it back up. So there was just this sense of a lot of sense of knowing and just bringing that in. So that's kind of the short version. But
very good. There's a little bit of feedback on your end. Do you have volume turned up at all?
oh, I might have
Lily?
to, let's see here.
I just turned it down a little bit. It's interesting you say all that. Was there ever a time when these beautiful gifts during your childhood came into play? And I think it's gone now because I'm not hearing it.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where these gifts came into play that really kind of saved your ass or put you in a good place to where it's like, you know, you had the sense of something that was coming or that someone was going to do, and you were able to negate that because of your knowing.
Well, people wouldn't really listen to me. So that was one problem. Because there was a family incident where it wasn't, I would just sense things, but I didn't have the depth enough to know that, oh, this is a crisis, or this is this, or this is that. It would just, I would get the experience and the feeling, and I would just say it like conversation because everything was natural to me. And so there was a family situation where I warned my dad about something. And, you know, they kind of just, you know, I was like 6 years old maybe. And they just kind of laughed it off, or that's just Eddie being Eddie. And my brother and I went somewhere, we came back, and there was a situation where my dad and my brother were almost run over by a truck that they were working on. It rolled. And I had told him to put the blocks behind there. And he usually did, but they were on more of a flatter surface. And so I felt that, but I didn't know I was feeling it to the degree that I was feeling it. And so there was a lot of things like that would happen where I would decide not to do something, and then it would happen. And as I got older, it seemed to be more. Like in, I don't know what year this was, but when the interstate bridge fell down in Minneapolis, collapsed.
Yeah, that was like late 90s, I think.
Yeah, I felt that like a couple days before it was happening. I really, really felt that. And I knew something was going to happen, but I couldn't quite adjust to it because it was, you know, I was working what I call my human job full time at the time. So it kind of would interfere with some of my abilities. And so I felt that probably 2 or 3 days before it happened. And when I remember coming home from work, I stepped outside and there were all the choppers in the air and all that kind of stuff. And I could feel something had happened. And I ran an errand and they had TV on and I saw what had happened. And I was like, that's what I was feeling.
Now, how did that feeling come to you?
It was like a tragedy because I could feel the emotion. So it's part of the being an empath. I could feel that because I knew that there was going to be fatalities in that. And I think there was 11 or 13, I don't remember. But I could feel that. I could just feel it in my body, and then I could see and feel the bridge falling kind of over and over once it had happened. So even before I looked at the TV, I realized something had collapsed. And then I saw the reality of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then how did you foray from your 3D world into what you're doing now? Were there other modalities and practices that you experimented with before you came into being, you know, a mentor?
I knew I always wanted to help people. So when I was 7, I was in my room writing a short story, of course. And I heard this voice behind me say, "You will help other people help themselves." And so that was kind of my mission in life, because I didn't exactly know what that meant at 7 years old. But I knew as I carried that through as I got older that was my destiny, and that was kind of what people call life purpose. And so I just continued to do really deep work on myself. And I would have little things happen that would kind of give me guidance. And the work with the angels at that time became more and more and more. And then I knew that I was connecting with 2 angels, and then there were other beings as well. But I just kept going with it. And I kind of just started doing it. And interestingly enough, the angels led me to a course here in Sedona when I was living in Minneapolis. And I didn't really know anything about Sedona, and it ended up being an angel course. And it wasn't really about what was being taught. It was the point for me to realize that what I have and had at that time, as much as it was developed, was to help other people. So when we do our breakout groups, people would have these really kind of big kind of things happening in their life, and I would give them guidance based on what I was receiving. And this was the way of the angels saying, it's time for you to teach, it's time for you to teach, it's time for you to do the work, but you need to be prepared for it
Mm.
because it's a huge responsibility. And so then I took that back when I came back home, and I started just practicing on friends and people around me and those types of things. Then I eventually started teaching. And then things just started to get more. But there was a point where I was like, I'm ready, I'm ready. And of course, Spirit is like, no, you're not. No, you're not. And I'm really glad that I listened to that, because that could have been not a good thing. So, because you really do have to be ready. I know it seems like it's fun to help people and it's great to help people, but it's a huge, huge responsibility. And if you're not doing your own work, that is not a good thing. So it's really about looking at how to set really strong boundaries and to be grounded, to be centered. And, at that time, it was about, a direct connection to spirit. So it's a little bit different than it is now, but it just is something I just continued to practice and be a part of, and just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into my work and what I was being guided into, and also activating my own inner wisdom. And it just seemed to come forward and fit. And so,
How, so how did that start to evolve for you over time?
for me, it's just everything is so natural. So as you get older, so to speak, and and then you look at that as spirit, it expands. So for me, I had a couple situations that would happen. I had a situation with a car where a semi truck almost tipped over on me, also in Minneapolis.
Oh,
I was returning back from, had worked in fitness, and I was returning from a class, and I was on the interstate, or coming back into the city, and I was kind of tired, and it was kind of snowing a little bit, and it was just about dusk, and I heard this voice say, change lanes now. And so I was tired enough to recognize that, okay, I'm going to change lanes. And as I changed lanes, I just noticed up ahead, I'm like, what's that in the road? And a semi truck trailer had come off the exit and turned over. If I had not merged over, I would have probably, either the front of my car or the whole car would have been smashed. So then that kind of put me in a very much a tailspin. And I had other things similar to that happen prior to this, but I wasn't quite as good at listening or assessing what was happening. And so that was more of an experience. That last one was, okay, I'm here. I was saved. There's a bigger experience happening. And then that's when I started to get like almost like a deeper mentoring from the angels and my spirit guides, and started activating more of my own inner wisdom. And that's when and then few years after that, then I started noticing, it was about in 2006, I started noticing I was having ascension symptoms, which we weren't really talking about ascension then, but this is when I was going through a lot of some of my density was crystallizing and shattering. And so I was feeling that and hearing that. And that's kind of what happens in the gist of the first part of the ascension experience. So I was going through a lot of that. And so that was bringing in this wisdom that was coming from someplace that's not really easy to put into words. But there was this deeper wisdom, and I could just connect to people and know exactly what was happening, or what I could just feel it. So it's a sense of reading energy. So when I work with someone, I just know, because I can feel their energy, and it's like I go there. So it's multiple things that are happening. So just more and more that started happening. And then when we, skip ahead a little bit to 2016 is when we got really blasted with ascension. And so that's when I got another wave of that. And then my life kind of fell apart at that point. But
and what does that look like, Eddie?
that's not fun. So I had, a pretty lengthy amount of time with my focus being, doing angel readings and healing with the angels and courses, and it was magical. And I was very blessed, and I was like, this is exactly what my life was meant to be. So those years we go through, what am I doing here? This is it, huh? As we do. And then this happened. And so it was, and then I started to transition from my focus being the angels to shamanism. And first traditional shamanism with the angel work, and then eventually just shamanism. And then I kind of went into my own kind of mystic and shaman together. And then my life completely fell apart. So I had a couple things were going on. I had a severe dark night of the soul, which was related to destiny. So a lot of things for me completed. And then I was also going through a chunk, which I had been going through for a while, is the shaman's death. And so when I go through a dark night of the soul, it's like every last little thing falls apart. So I had gone through, as every day we're going through a mini dark night of the soul, but I had gone through several dark nights of the soul as we do. But this was a destiny one. This was setting me up for, this is why you're here. And so a lot of things completed. It was very, very confusing because I literally thought I was either being kicked out of the spiritual work that I was doing, because that's what you kind of feel is happening. And then there was a part of me on the second part of that, I thought, oh, maybe I'm physically dying. I'm done, because there was so much completing. And so a lot of the spiritual things that I had just started, and then, much of that was completing, and I kept asking spirit, I'm like, well, I just started this, and I just started, working on this for myself. No, you are complete. You are complete. You are complete. And so one of the big lessons that came out of that is the reason we're here is not so much about the work that we think we're here to do to help other people. That's a bonus. But it's really about developing ourselves so we then can help humanity without getting into this ego of physical doing. I mean, that's an important piece because people need help, and we need to help each other. But it's really about developing ourselves to the point where we are illuminating humanity by what we're doing. So we're changing who we are. We're getting out of this density body. We're going through our awakening. And then further down the road, we're going into our ascension level, which all of that is ongoing. But it really taught me that it's not so much about, I'm here to be a light worker as a teacher. I'm here to be a practitioner. I'm here to be a wayshower, whatever you feel that is. It's more than that. That's the added bonus when you can really participate in that. And that's a beautiful thing. But the deeper part is why we're actually here.
So is it like just being you, just being out around other people, your light is affecting others, or is it the actions that you're doing and how you are setting an example, or all of the above?
It's all the above. Because, and people talk about this all the time, but very few people listen. But everything you do goes out into humanity, and it's part of the universal oneness that we are. And that's really what oneness means. We all have different experiences, and we all have different ways to our journey, but it's what we contribute into that makes us one.
It's like that butterfly effect.
That includes the shadow stuff that we do, or the evil stuff that we do. That's also going into humanity, as we know. But it's that light of illumination of what we have learned, what we've contributed, and what we can help other people with, or a situation. It doesn't always have to be people or animals or the nature. It's just all of it. It's being the role model and putting that out into humanity. That's what really helps change.
I find it so interesting. I'm going to backtrack just a little bit, because when you were talking from going from the angel practice into the more shamanic type teaching, that's like one's way up here and one's way down here, grounded on earth. How did that come to be?
Well, that was part of the experience that in the moment was complete, because I had done so much deep spiritual work, the psychic work and the intuitive work and angels and ascended masters and all the beings of light, in which in shamanism we call that the upper world, that it was time for me to root and seed into the earth, which I always had as a kid. I grew up, pretty much grew up in the woods, because our house was only 100 feet off of acres and acres and acres of woods.
Mm.
And I had access to that. So that was a kind of a knowing for me, but it was now time for me to do a lot of earth work. And I've done that for a long, long time. But then there came a point where there was this merging, which we always know that, spirit and nature go together. But it was the way the work was being separated for me to bring into mainly what I was teaching through that phase, and then started doing more practitioner work, and then having a stronger connection with Gaia. And then the animals came in, which I never really expected to happen.
That's neat.
And that's a story in itself too. So then it just started then the spirit part that I had spent so much time within came together. And that's kind of where I am today. It's everything is about, my work is a lot about, of course, mentoring and bringing people messages and all those pieces to help them remember who they are as a individual, as a spirit being, as a emotional being, if you will, but finding their own pathway versus trying to grab on to fitting in or somebody else's pathway. So that's where my work gets really, really deep. And I don't call it complicated, but people sometimes will say, that's really deep and complicated. And because we are deep and complicated when we get to that level of going into true nature. Did I answer your question, or did I?
Yeah, no, you did.
Okay.
That's very interesting. So how do the animals fit into all of this, into the ascension process? Because it seems like, to me, it feels like there's a big transition going on in the animal world right now too.
There is.
I seem to see a lot of death when it comes to animals, which hurts me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of animals are leaving the planet right now,
Right.
or so I'm seeing. But there's still quite a few here. How are they affected? What's their role in all this?
Well, they have a purpose just like we do, and a kind of a destiny, and contracts and all that things, same things. But it's interesting because they're stepping into a role of being like master teachers for us, because they're the role model. They're really humans get a lot of ego stuff where humans want to believe that we are the most evolved beings on this planet, when it actually is the other way around. We are the least evolved beings on the planet. And that's not to belittle, because we can raise that vibration, but we have to listen and watch the surroundings. So like when I do my animal ceremony sessions, it's more than just messages. It is about the medicine wheel and what direction someone is in, and that all plays a part in the elements. And they really are here to teach us to take better care of nature and the planet. And so that's their contribution to ascension. And we could talk about hours about this, because they are the teachers right now. And if you just pay attention to what they're doing, and that goes with anything in nature, if you just spend some time out in nature and just sit there and look at how nature communicates and actually gets along with each other, if you will.
Yeah.
And we just watch how it communicates and how it moves in harmony and how it's rhythmically connected. So when I started doing animal work, like I said, I never expected to do that, because I had basic level 1 communication with the animals, as we all have the ability to communicate with the animals, but I just had like level 1 basics. It's just something natural. And then they started, I would notice when I was in a park doing earthing or doing meditation, all these animals started coming closer to me. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, because I see other people and that's not happening to them. Okay, what's really happening here? So I just observed it. And then suddenly I started having these kind of interesting relationships with dogs, as they were looking at me like, I know you see my soul. I know that you can hear me. And so, and I did try to ignore some of that. And then when I, it just deeper and deeper, and then I was started having totem energy kind of come at me, not in a bad way, in a good way, to say that, yep, you have this piece, you have this piece. So then I just started communicating with the wild animal kingdom, if you will, and then doing the session that I do, animal ceremony, which brings in the medicine wheel and the elements and how the animals are coming into the ceremony, and it all relates. And so it's kind of like looking at that. So the gist of why I'm telling you this is because it's bringing in that life cycle. It's bringing in that whole cycle, which is the beauty of ceremony, because it opens your eyes to more than just what's my message, or what is this for me, or what is this. It's really looking at how everything in that experience and the natural world is a teacher for us. All the medicine is a teacher for us, and it works in harmony. So in that session that I do, it's the animals, it's the elements, it's the four directions, it's the plant medicine. It all is a part of the experience to create this beautiful experience for the client.
Wow. I've been having some animal experiences myself. Like, I will know before I go to the forest what I'm going to encounter. I know I'm going to find the turkey feather. I know I'm going to run into a deer, and I'll turn the corner and there's a deer.
Yes.
I'll know, go this direction. You're going to see the bobcat today.
Yeah.
So is that the animals communicating with me? Is that the earth communicating? How can we learn to better discern these everyday things?
Yeah, what you're describing is your natural ability. So a lot of times we want to say, you hear people say this all the time, my guides are telling me to do this, or my angels are telling me to do this, or the animals are telling me to do this. And sometimes they are, but it's not, they're not telling you to do it. They're giving you guidance. But we also have to know the difference in what the feeling is of our own innate inner experience. Because we all can communicate with the animals. We all can communicate with spirit. We have that in ourselves. It's just all these density and this human noise gets in the way. So a lot of that knowing, oh, I'm going to see a deer, like you said, and you turn the corner and there it is. That's your own intuition. That's your own experience. Or, and the flip side of that was if you would receive a message that was related to the deer, that's probably the deer speaking to you in spirit. And then you turn the corner and there it is. So there's a different feeling in that, and that's what I teach people to do and mentor people on, if that's what they're coming in for. But it's we have a lot of natural wisdom that we kind of want to put on someone else or some other being. So there's that piece of it, and then there is the communication piece that we receive through ourselves. So we're very powerful, and we're not accessing the power and being still enough so we can go inside of that. So that's why I love the one-on-one mentorship program that I do, because it gives people the opportunity to really melt into their essence of their true nature. And it helps them find their way of wherever they need to be in this earth walking experience.
Now, have you noticed there is a larger contingency of people awakening right now? Do you feel that?
There is, yeah.
What do we as a spiritual community need to do to assist these people, if anything?
It's something that has to, well, the first part of it is there's so much like now it's such an informational highway. There's you look at YouTube and in just the spiritual realm, it's like,
it's overwhelming.
Wow, it's very overwhelming, and some of it's okay and some of it's not so okay. So it's a point of really being able to deepen your intuition. Because in our physical world and our all aspects of our world, there's just a lot of stuff going on. So we have to really check into our intuition and make that much stronger than what it is, so we can discern what's right for me, what's right for an experience. But the most important thing right now is, in terms of your question of awakening, it happens when it happens, and you'll know it when you know it. So in terms of support, one of the things that happens in the beginning is, because in the beginning, when you first are in that first level of awakening, what you're doing is you're listening to other people, you're reading as many books as you can get your hands on, all that information out there. And so what I always advise people on who are kind of moving more into that, definitely in the awakening journey, is instead of saying, this person says this, they're saying this, I had a reading and they said I'm this. The real big question is, when you're connecting to all that information, is ask yourself, what do I feel? Versus this, based on that. And we've gotten away from that. There's a lot of mental energy out there right now. We're missing the feeling piece. And that's the thing that I'm always getting on my clients about. I'm like, I'll ask them a question, tell me what the feeling is. They give me something that's not a feeling. And then I have to say, is that a feeling? No, it is not.
Been there, done that.
Just have a good laugh about that, because that's what our condition is right now. Is we want to connect to feeling, but then we listen to this. And this is not feeling. The heart is the feeling place and emotion and all that. And that's where the wisdom is. So it's really opening up that support system and opening up coaching and mentoring, but also letting people engage their experiences from what they are. Because a lot of times it's everybody kind of wants to do the same thing. And that's the surface level. And so it's really about letting people talk about and heal through what they've experienced, so they can, what I call, sink into their true nature and find whatever their abilities and talents are for possibly assisting others down the road. But it's just the support system. So we got to get a little better with the support system and not rush into everything. Everything is a big rush now. Hurry up and wake up, hurry up and do this, hurry up and create your online course. And that's that message of there's not enough when there actually is. So there's a lot of that. It's kind of the ending of the 3D world, and that's kind of part of the 3D is single, do, when it should be, what do I feel in this moment? Or what did I feel pertaining to what I'm experiencing in this moment? And just let yourself be with that. And that's, a lot of the presence and stillness. So when I teach or guide people through shamanic presence, that's what that's all about. It's like taking the teachings of presence and the natural world along with the spirit world and bringing it together and being able to just sit in silence with that and see, what are you feeling with that? Because that wisdom's in there. It may be in dormant, but it's in there. And so that's where, spirit comes in too, to help us to activate what we already know.
It's like we're moving out of the masculine and more into the feminine now.
Yes.
We've lost so much feminine.
Yep.
I mean, we both worked in that corporate world for so long. It's very do, masculine. You forget how to feel.
Yep.
And that's what we're coming back to as humanity.
Yeah, the feminine is really interesting because that's also being misused. Feminine it's important to understand the difference between 3D feminine and multidimensional feminine, because it's been getting described as if it's a human woman and only for women.
Yeah.
And it's that soul essence level that we're missing. And I see that happening every day on social media. So it's
well, it's more the softness, the feeling, it has nothing to do with male or female.
Right. But it's really hard for people to kind of separate that. So it's when you get into more the Shakti vibration, that becomes the true essence of what the feminine is really here to do. And that will be more of a simultaneous, so more of the emotional intelligence and being able to get into that. So it's happening this way simultaneously versus this or that, which is more the masculine. And that's what we're struggling with right now as a collective, is the polarity. People know what polarity is, they know when it's happening, but they don't realize they're addicted to it. And that's the tricky,
a really good point.
that's the tricky piece. So once, because the pineal gland is really starting to activate for a lot of people, and once that starts to activate more in a deeper level, it will activate emotional intelligence. So there's a big piece of that, and then it's really more of the open heart concept, so to speak. And it's not really a concept, but for the the discussion point,
Coming from here to here, right?
Yep. And then we start to activate more of our galactic body, so to speak, the galactic heart, and being able to go into all these pieces that we are, which is what ascension is. And that just takes us into the power of source that we are. That activates our power. Because I've been noticing that's coming up for a lot of my clients, and they always ask the question, what do you mean by power? So that always challenges me when those little things come up. But it's really, ascension is really about recognizing that we are multidimensional, and that is about returning to source in terms of our source power. So the void of the soul is what that really is about. So, and that kind of going back to when we talk about awakening, it's important to understand we have to go through awakening first, and then we move into ascension. Because a lot of times there's so much discussion about ascension that we forget that we can't, to move into ascension, you can't know it. You have to become it. And you do that through awakening. So when all these pieces start to happen, and it's happening much differently than, say, it used to. So people are moving through awakening much quicker. But we have to remember it's the experience and not so much the knowing what awakening is. Because knowing, it's good to know, but knowing will not push you into awakening. It's when you start opening and healing and doing some of those, and you just have to be open to it. That's really all the human really has to do, is just be open to awakening. And then everything will take its course. Same thing with ascension.
Now we talk about all these things, and it's like, do we get to enjoy being human too? Do we get to savor all the wonder of the world, all the beautiful accoutrements that come with being human? I think we forget that that's part of why we're here too.
Yep.
What do you tell people when they get so entrenched in the learning, the awakening, the doing, having to get to these places? How do you guide them into remembering you're here to have the human experience also?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's why we want to get away from doing, because this whole doing piece just gets in the way. You just have to be, again, learning to have an open heart and just to heal through these experiences while you're having the experience of the human perspective. So, and that changes how you view things. So as you go through awakening, or you just open your heart, because we can say, I am source, I am a light worker, I am this, I am that. That actually gets in the way too, because that's a false identification. Not that we're not those things, but there's something beyond that. And that's what you learn through experiencing the human glory, so to speak, versus the density. The density just gets in the way. And as you move through your experiences and open your heart, you see that. And that's kind of where we're at. And we're kind of in that transitional state of being right now. So, but it is important to take time to just be able to enjoy what's present for you. And so that's the deeper experience of getting away from doing. Because oftentimes when we recognize spiritual gifts or intuition or whatever that might be for an individual, it's not something you do, it's something you are, just like taking a breath. And so once we get to that point, and sometimes people will say they know that, but then they really don't, because they're still uncomfortable with it. So the more we can just see that this is a natural ability, there's more talk about just the natural dynamics that we have, intuition, using our third eye, using our senses. There's more of that being talked about now than there used to be. And so there's this push for natural. Even when we talk about natural food and natural health and all those, more natural is coming into the conversation. So that's the other piece that I really work with people on, is their naturalism. What's natural for you? And that's what happens when you start to activate your true nature, is you realize what you have that is natural, which is a lot of things.
Interesting. Is that kind of like being in the flow, going with where you're guided, instead of like, I'm going to make my to-do list and go through all these things today?
Right. It's being able to let go. And one of the hardest things that I see people struggling with is either trying to figure out, what does that mean? How is it? All those and those are all 3D ways. So when something is happening or something is evolving, it's just sink into it, be present with it, and just go with it. And that comes from not feeling energetically safe. And those can affect people in different ways, because people have been lied to or deceived, or maybe they belong to some type of institution, a spiritual institution or religious institution that's really abused that. So it's made them feel afraid, or they may not have felt safe in their childhood. So those all play a part of that. So that's the important piece about being able to truly understand frequency and energy. And that's why transitioning to the heart is a much better place than the thinking mind. And we're going to have polarity thoughts, because that's some things we need to have that. But we need to find that centering place, which really comes from stepping into the heart and using those brain cells that are actually in the heart, and using that emotional intelligence.
You touch upon the truth and all of that. That's another thing that seems to be falling away, is you see people now, you can tell when they're telling you a lie. You can read them energetically. I mean, that becomes, it's more and more apparent. There is no more barrier there. It's like everybody's getting exposed now.
Yep.
And with that falling away and other things kind of popping up as we ascend as humanity, where do you see things going? Where do you think things are gonna fall away more in our lifetime? Or is this going to be a long, gradual process that we may never see, the full extent of it in this lifetime?
Okay, say that last part. You froze for just a little bit on my
sorry.
end.
What will we see in our lifetime as far as this ascension goes? We keep seeing some things falling away. Yeah. Will we see more fall away? Will we get to the end of this? Will we make a bigger transition at some point? Or is it more than we will ever see in our lifetime? It'll be many lifetimes from now.
It'll be multiple lifetimes. We're starting to see some things happening. In the physical world, we'll have to change first, obviously, and some of that. But the more people start to tune into intuition, and the energy field is full of evidence of what is happening. So one of the things that I see a lot is people have really dirty energy fields. They're kind of mucus color, and there's lots of reasons for that, but when people are not truthful, your energy field turns a color. And so and then when you're just really not in your purpose or your meaning, it's going to be another color. If there's an illness, it's going to illuminate another experience, kind of on that same level. So the more people are awakening to their natural technology, if you will, a lot of that deception is going to go away, and that's going to help evolve. But it's a slow process. We're just beginning to experience it. So there's a lot of authentic things that need to happen. One of those is the fifth dimension, as we call it. It's being taught not in the greatest way. It's being taught like it's the third dimension. because the fifth dimension and multidimensional experience is really just about that. It's about the experience, not how to do it. And so it's kind of like having a core issue, and then you have all these streamlines coming in, which are representations of other dimensions, if you will, which are just frequencies and bandwidths and all that of wisdom coming in, but they're related to this core issue. So it's just being able to experience what you're feeling from all these energies that are coming in versus this or that, because that's the way the third dimension works. This or that, external, single dimension. And that's what's kind of people are getting confused with that. So it's important to, if you are teaching the fifth dimension, to make sure you are there yourself and understand it, because we don't want to confuse people. But it's really about the experience, how to experience it, and everybody will experience it in a different way. But it's a lot of streamlines coming in.
For the longest time, it was like you're physically going to go somewhere. Right. Oh, you're going to leave 3D and go to 5D, and you won't see these people anymore. And it's like, what? But it's more, we're going to feel it. We'll feel it if we're there.
Yep.
And intuitively, it doesn't feel like we're going to always be there 100% of the time.
No. Mm-hmm.
We're going to kind of be floating in this, coagulation between the two, sort of.
Yeah. And there is density 3D, which is the one we talk about the most. But then there's organic 3D, which is where a lot of people are paralleling into, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but it is still a single dimension. It is still external. And we'll probably see that for the next 5 years or so. And then some people are actually in what's considered to be fifth dimension, which really just means multidimensional. It's not just the fifth dimension. So that's kind of some of the, we're going to change some of the terminology that we're using, because it's deceiving a little bit. And that's where the confusion comes in between teaching fifth dimension and third dimension. Third dimension sometimes gets just a disguise of the fifth dimension, which is not really the fifth dimension. So,
and the fifth dimension, is that more of the feeling we were talking about?
Yep.
Being in that feeling space.
Yep.
And being in the flow and just letting experiences kind of roll over you rather than seeking.
Yep. And trying to define. There's always that defining, and that's 3D. And so
we like to label things.
Yes. So it's a beautiful space. It's just we have to be able to, and I was having a conversation about this not too long ago, is the challenging piece with 3D right now is asking yourself the question, kind of like when we have a toxic piece in our life that we know we need to heal, we want to get rid of, but we just can't because it's comfortable. It's icky, it's horrible, but at least we know what to expect every day. That's the same thing that's happening with 3D. We really want to get rid of it. We want to just push it away, but can we survive without it on an emotional level? Because we're so comfortable with it. And so that's where some of the teachings get confusing as well. So that's the exploration. So that's when you really get into, just like we do in our own personal healing, is surrender, the space between, and letting go. Once we conquer that, then we can kind of maneuver it away. And it just goes back with getting comfortable with the experience of the space between, and being comfortable with the unknown, because that's the real study or the real awareness that needs to happen. So there's a lot of work inside that.
So someone might tune into this and go, you went from third dimension to fifth dimension. What happened to the fourth? What is that? Where is that? How did we lose that?
So that's a 3D concept. So fourth dimension is there. The earth has been in that. And so it's kind of like the space between. It kind of merges the two, and it makes that transition easy. We just don't focus on it. For a long time, the earth was in the fourth dimension, and some parts of it still are. But as we transitioned through that, it was, because breaking the dimensions down third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. There isn't an order to those. Once we move through halfway through the fourth dimension, we start to just move into multidimensional, because we're really just multidimensional, but 3D, like 2D and 3D, those were very single dimension levels. And as we move through that, then we start to recognize more as a human, we are multidimensional. And so we kind of maneuver through that fourth dimension, but nobody really talks about the fourth dimension.
What do you think the highest dimension is a person on the earth could actually achieve?
I think it's endless. You know, it just depends.
So you could be here in this body and achieve much, much higher dimensions.
Yeah.
You wouldn't like
There's always
implode
like,
or anything.
What's that?
You wouldn't implode or anything.
No. Because we have to remember we're frequency, we're emotion, we're energy before we're like human. This is just a container that we travel around it. And so that's, you know, and there's always that battle of how many dimensions are there, or is dimension really the right word? You know, that's kind of the debate right now. So that's why I always use alignments and frequencies and bandwidth, because that's really, it just starts to get bigger. So it's just like when we say higher dimensions or higher levels, it's actually really deeper versus higher. So higher and lower is an old terminology, and we'll eventually transition out of that. Everything is deeper, and then it just expands out this way. So there's that. But yeah, there's the debate on actually how many dimensions are there?
You said something during our session that I had with you a while back. It's not the higher self, it's actually the deeper self. Is that what you called it?
Yes.
Rather than thinking it's out here somewhere,
Yep.
It's actually in here. I like that.
Yeah, because when we do the higher, it depletes who we are. And so we don't want to do that, because we're very powerful.
I like, oh,
Yep.
wow, that makes sense.
It's like when we talk about angels earlier, a lot of times, and people still kind of do this, that angels are outside of us. They actually are within our field and within our hara line. And so, and they're on the same level as we are. They just have lots of times a deeper vibration, a bigger vibration, because they're a vortex, as we are too, but just a different realm. So they come through us, or they are stationed in our field, like a guardian angel, so to speak. So when we are always seeking outside, we're making them responsible, and we're not taking responsibility for our pathway. So we're always seeking outside of ourselves. So the higher and even the lower, particularly the higher, it demeans what we really are and makes us not take responsibility, whether that be spiritual responsibility or physical responsibility. So everything is deeper, and that's some of the language that we'll be changing to. Because a lot of the older spiritual education is actually obsolete now, because we know more. Some of it it'll always be valid. Like some of the oracle cards that are out there, they're beautiful, beautiful artwork. But when you get to the words, a lot of them are outdated, because they're just reproduced from something older. So you have to be really, really careful with that. You want to use your intuition and there's different levels for where people are right now. And you can use those basics, but it has to be in this current alignment. It can't be the 1980 alignment, because we're done with that.
Yeah.
So it's just some of the terminology and some of the ways that we're describing things, they're outdated. And that'll just take time. That's going to take time for authors and experiences to really bring that into our awareness. So,
although that rock and roll, man, still good shit.
Oh, it is the best. I listen to it every morning.
Oh, me too. I do too. So do you still talk to your angels? I mean, not like you would just say, I'm doing shamanic work now, go away, angels, but Are they in your field as much as they were before?
Yeah, yeah, they are. Yeah, when I stopped doing angel work publicly, I had many people ask me, um, why did I do that, or what happened? And it was actually a conversation and a channel I had with Archangel Michael. Said it's time. It's time to transition for the moment. So it just shifted because there's a different feeling that I connect to when I was doing messages for people or on social media or whatever. There's a different feeling because it's a collective message. And then it just started to turn more inward. And so I work with angels every day, multiple times. Like I've said many times, if I didn't see an angel, I would feel like, my God, there is something wrong. I must be dead. Because it happens every day. So, and that's kind of the way it's always been for me. So yeah, they're coming through in more of a powerful way than they ever have. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of angel work coming up in different things. I'm just letting it unfold right now. So, and that's been happening for probably about 4 years coming up to this point. So yeah, they're very powerful. In fact, they are my first memory when I was about probably 3 to 4 months old, waking up in my crib and seeing angels around the outside of my crib.
So you physically see them, like you see my hand right now.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I see them through my third eye too a lot, but when I wasn't very clairvoyant as a kid. Maybe I would have a clairvoyant experience about every 6 to 8 months, maybe, or maybe even more than that. I don't know. Some people's a lot, but I was like, okay, clairvoyant is every day, every moment. But then because my thing is sense of knowing and feeling when I was a kid, and then when I was roughly around 30, early 30s, it turned on really. My third eye turned on really bright, which was different than my clairvoyance when I was a kid. And then it's got strong, and then it kind of balanced out. So, but I saw spirit with my physical eyes first, and then my third eye started to, little by little, not super clear, but it was turning on. So,
and your third eye is more of the knowing than actually the physically seeing. Is that correct? Or how would you describe that?
no, I actually see with it. But it's like we get focused on like the 4 clairs, as we call them. But we really have all of them. Every person has all of them, because sometimes we can feel something so deeply that it's a vision, or we can know something so much it's a vision. And so I know everybody wants to be able to see, like energy healers and people who are doing body work and things like that. It's better to be able to feel than it is to see, because if we're just seeing, a lot of times people don't know what to do with that, or it's inaccurate. So it's really about all the clairs, and there are more than 4, of course, but being able to bring all those together is like a centering way of communication, and that's what we have. So, but there's different levels of that. So, like scent is one that we don't really talk about, but it's important. So,
I actually breathe through my third eye.
Yeah.
Sometimes, which people are like, what?
Yeah.
It's like when I do it, something always happens. It's weird.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anything's possible, right?
Yes, it is, and that's a perfect example. You just have to trust what you're receiving and how you communicate and all those pieces. So that's why it's good to be educated. It's good to go to classes and all the podcasts and all those things, but always come back to what works for me and what is coming through. Because I never paid any attention to any of that stuff, because I just it was kind of natural for me. And so I have different ways of connecting that some of them I don't even know. I really couldn't put it into words, but I just know it happens and it works. And some things are what most people have that do this type of work. But I just really trust my different modalities that I have that come through naturally, and I would just go with it.
And I think sometimes classes are good to like bridge that gap, because when you're first starting out, you're just kind of
Yes.
seeking and feeling your way through, and at one point I was told, stop seeking, the answers within yourself. And
Yeah.
everybody's going to get slapped upside the head with that at some point.
Yes. Yeah. Because people get very addicted to that. I never really took classes because when I started, there weren't a lot of classes. And where I grew up, there weren't a lot of classes. So I had to just rely on spirit. Show me, teach me, help me to remember. And anybody can do that.
Absolutely.
But there are a lot of classes, a lot of great classes out there, a lot of great training tools. But at some point, you have to cut the umbilical cord.
Yeah, I was addicted to readings. Give me any kind of reading.
Oh, yeah. 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 I have to say that to people sometimes. It's like some of my friends, I'm like, you just have to stop. You have to start trusting, because then it can get confusing. What is mine and what did I learn from a reading? And then sometimes that can just get muddy. If you're not developing what comes through the reading, it'll just get muddy and the same thing comes through and through and through, and it can get kind of muddy. So, yeah.
So, Eddie, is there an angel present now that perhaps would like to share a message with everybody in this now moment that you?
Well, actually, it's the Arcturians that are here. They started to come in when I
Oh.
logged in. I feel this, and that's my galactic origin. So I have a lot of those characteristics, which is a whole nother story. But
we're gonna have to talk again. Sorry.
Yes. So the Arcturians are coming in, and it's kind of, they come in straight down first, and then it expands through my field this way. So they're just really talking about a lot of what we talked about today, but they're really talking about the frequency and how to go to the deepest level of your own frequency to navigate what is important for whatever you're experiencing. So it's kind of like going down, down, down in your frequency and being able to go side to side and kind of adjusting what that is, but being true to your own heart. So they come in with a lot of frequency, because when I logged on today, because we have weather here in Sedona, it doesn't take much for the internet to go out. So I was logging in very diligently, and I heard this really sharp frequency, and I knew that was the Arcturians. So it's kind of like what they were showing me is almost like a spear coming down through the center of the Hara line and going to the deepest level and rooting into the earth, but being able to use that to go to the deepest place of your heart. It's kind of a basic message from them, but it really centers around going to the depth of your heart when you don't know, and just kind of letting it vibrate through your body. And then that, whatever that message is or that guidance, will come through. So,
and can I just say, basic is best?
Yeah.
I mean, because another human trait we all have, we like to overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
And make them difficult, when keep it simple, stupid really applies.
Yep. It really does.
Thank you, Arcturians. We appreciate that. All right, Eddie. Well, is there anything that you want to let people know that you have coming up here in the near future that
I
you out for?
I took some time off, and now I'm kind of moving back full force into my work. So I have sessions available, and you can find out about my sessions on my website at eddiemullins.com. And I have, as I've been talking about periodically, a one-on-one mentorship program, which is called Soul Navigating, which mentors you on who you are. And it takes you to the deep level. So there's healing in there, there's messages, there's journey work, but most importantly, we're getting to the source of your true nature. And so it's a powerful program, and it's different for everybody. So, and I'll have some classes coming up, and I have a couple new programs coming up. So, and if you go to my website and you like what you've heard here, and you're not really sure what to do, you can book a consultation, and then we can talk about what that would look like for you or what would work best for you. So thank you.
And that's Eddie. I highly recommend Eddie. My session was just amazing.
Thank you.
And I had given up doing sessions, and then all of a sudden I'm like, nope, you got to go to Eddie. And I'm like, okay. It was awesome.
It's great. Yeah.
I appreciate you. And I'll put the information down below for everybody to see. And we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, this is fun. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Eddie. And we will see you later. Bye-bye.
All right.